happening now or very shortly. Day one of the federal trial of Sean Combs. Very shortly, we could see opening statements. He has pleaded not guilty to charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. I think what you're looking at right now, to explain what the picture actually is you're looking at the line outside the courthouse of people waiting to get in to that trial. It's not just a random street shot in New York City. That's outside the federal courthouse downtown. With us now is CNN senior legal analyst and former state and federal prosecutor Ellie Holding and defense attorney Misty Marris. And because I think we are going to hear opening statements, or we're expecting to sometime fairly soon, let's talk about those. First for the prosecution and the defense. Ellie, what does the prosecution need to do in these statements?
So two things. First of all, the prosecution needs to convince this jury or explain to this jury that Sean Combs' conduct was horrible. But second, and more difficult, that his horrible conduct actually matches the federal crime. Got a lot of proof. We're familiar. We know there's going to be at least three, maybe four different victims and witnesses taking the stand. We remember from the indictment there's evidence of guns and drugs and baby oil and all sorts of things like that. Fine, that's important. You need to convince the jury this is a really bad guy. But the charge here is not domestic violence. It's not that he had a long-term bad relationship with somebody. It's racketeering. And so the prosecution has to explain to the jury that racketeering means an ongoing criminal enterprise and that this was about more than a domestically abusive relationship.
So you come out and say what? This is a case about what?
This is a case about a criminal operation. This is not about the bad relationship between one person, one man, one woman. This is about an ongoing, intentional operation.
All right, Misty, we do understand that the defense is excited to lay out its case, or Elizabeth Wagmeister is saying this is going to be their first chance to say what their version of event is. What do you expect from them in the opening statement?
The defense is going to have to get out of the big issue for them, which is that video of Cassie. And to Ellie's point, prosecutors have this burden to show this isn't just a domestic violence incident. That's not what he's charged with. This is sex trafficking and racketeering. That's where the defense is going to have to toe a fine line. They're going to have to concede to bad behavior. This video exists. You're going to see it. But it's part of a long-term, volatile relationship. And the prosecutor's star witness is somebody who was in a relationship with Diddy for 10 plus years. So they're going to start to sow those, just basically saying, you know, look at this with a skeptical eye, because this is the prosecution's star witness. And this is not what he's charged with is not what you're going to see on
You're
that
talking
video.
about Cassie Ventura, longtime girlfriend to Sean Combs, and you're talking about a video which was first obtained by CNN years ago, which does show a moment of abuse between Combs and Ventura. You're suggesting that the defense, even in their opening statements, gets out ahead and explains
They're
this.
going to have to. They know it's coming into the courtroom. They fought to keep it out. But what they don't want is for the jury to look at every single piece of evidence in this case through the prism of that he is a violent abuser. Remember, prosecution's argument is going to be, this is an all-powerful, rich, famous man who used his power to force women and others into sexual transactions through force, fraud, and coercion. They're going to say, look at the force. Yeah, you can see it on the video.
That's spot on, but that video is devastating evidence for the prosecution.
So the defense fought hard to keep it out.
Yeah.
The prosecution got it in. How careful do they have to be with how they use it? How would you use it?
Right, so you can't use it in an inflammatory manner, but you can. What the technical reason it's in is to show that there was force involved in this sex trafficking, which is a key element of the crimes. But man, seeing it on tape like that, I mean, we've all seen the tape. Yeah. It's so visceral, it's so stomach churning, and there's a huge difference as a prosecutor or even a witness saying this was a violent man, this was a man who engaged in assaults, and just rolling that video. That is going to imprint itself in the jury's brains.
So there was a civil case of sexual assault that Cassie Ventura brought, and it was settled.
Yes.
How does that play here? Is that something the defense can and will use?
The defense is absolutely going to use that. The cross-examination of Cassie, again, this is an area where they're going to have to be gentle, but also really go for the jugular. And I say that because the jury's going to see that video. They're going to see Cassie as at least being victimized in that instance. But what the defense is going to say is not only was she in this long-term relationship, she experienced abuse in this isolated way in the course of a volatile relationship, but she also brought a civil suit and she got paid a tremendous amount of money. Keep in mind, the defense has also asked the court on cross-examination to bring in evidence that Cassie was mutually violent with Diddy. So we know where this cross is going to go, and they're going to use that settlement as well as other factors from their relationship to try and undercut her testimony.
And again, as we are getting, we think, ready for opening statements sometime today, I was struck by reading this is sort of a full employment act for lawyers here. I understand there are 8 lawyers that are going to be on the defense bench there and 6 for the federal prosecutors.
That absolutely baffles me. Having 6 assistant U.S. attorneys sit at the table. So first of all, in all of my time there, I never was part of or heard of more than 3 AUSAs in a case. And I'm talking massive terrorism cases, organized crime cases. In fact, sometimes I did a couple where we had 3. I felt a little bit like, does this look like we're overkilling it? Does the jury look and go, they need 3 people for this? 6 prosecutors on 1 defendant is ridiculous, and it sends a bad message to the jury. It's going to play into the defense point that Misty was making right now, that this is a pile-on. Everyone's trying to get their glory, their piece of fame off of this case. And when you have 6 prosecutors sitting there, it feeds into that.
All right, Ellie Hody, Misty Marris, don't go far. Obviously, we are waiting for this to get underway.